only one person who can save you. Only one. Only one person. Only one person can get through this wall. You see, Jesus did what had to be done. He loved us all. He loves us. He had to go to the cross. And he did it for you. And he did it for me. And you know what he thought of as he was hanging on that cross? It wasn't how much that hurt. It wasn't how bad it was and how long it took him. You know what he was thinking? He was thinking about your face. You. He saw your face. And he said, I'm doing this for you. And there's the third thing that I want to point out to you tonight. Third thing is, when Jesus was on the cross, understand this, there's such symbolism in this. And Karen, could you hit the lights? There's such symbolism in this. I don't know if anybody read this part in the Bible when Jesus was on the cross, but he was on the cross. And then what happened was the veil of the temple, not those lights, Karen, sorry. The veil of the temple was torn in two. The temple was where the priests would take the offerings, the sacrifices, and only one priest was allowed in at a time. And that priest, because they weren't sure about, because God had this ritual, he had to go through a cleansing process. Not only that, but when he went in, some priests would fall and die. And so they had to tie this bell around his waist and have a rope tied to him, so that when he went into the Holy of Holies, if he was unclean, he would just fall and die. And if they didn't hear the bell moving, they would pull him back out. This is the power of God, and it's sitting right there in that room. And then what happens? When Jesus dies on the cross, that veil of that room gets torn in two, meaning, you know what? His spirit now is with us. We don't have to go to a room. We don't have to go to a priest. His spirit is with us. And the sin that was on this wall has now been carried away once and for all. For you. For every sin that you've ever committed, every sin that you're going to commit. God did it for you. Each and every one of you. And Pastor, if you wouldn't mind this. Such a gracious God. If you could just stand up and let's all bow our heads and close our eyes. He did that for me. And maybe you guys don't get this, but this is the significance of Christmas. Because if he had not come down and come as a baby, born of a virgin, he wouldn't have been on that cross and he wouldn't have died for our sins. Now with every head bowed and every eye closed, nobody looking around, this is our response to this. You see, Jesus said in verse 6 of John 14, the last verse that we read, he told his disciples when he was with them, he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody can come to the Father. No one can talk to God. No one can do this. No one can do that, but by Jesus. There's only one way to get to God. There's only one way to get to heaven. And it's not what you do on this earth. It's not your good intentions. It's not the fact that you come to youth group. It's not the fact that you go to Sunday service. It's not the fact that maybe you tithe once in a while. It's not the fact that, I went to youth convention, or I went to youth camp, or I did this, I did that. That has nothing to do with it. Those are all good things. But if you don't mean it in your heart, if you're not talking to God, if you're not working this out on your own, between you and God, and you're serious about it, God knows. And one day we're all going to stand in front of Him and give an account for everything that we've done. What will you have to say to God when He says, you're being committed, you've done this and you've done this? What are you going to be able to say to Him? But no, God, And He'll just shake His head at you and say, I never knew you. The only way that we have any kind of hope is because what Jesus did. And His blood covers our multitude of sins. So that we can stand in front of God and say, God, I did all of those things. I have no justification. I have no excuses for what I've done. But I did ask Jesus to forgive me. And then God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter and celebrate. And we'll have that communion that Adam and Eve once had with God.